Wow, money came into your life, or at least that's why you're here. Either some money has shown up and you've got questions about it, or you're kind of curious to see what does it mean if somebody gets a big chunk of money or an inheritance come into their world. What's the big deal? I'm Dee Dee Jones with Innovative Financial, and thank you for joining us. We're going to have a very interesting conversation today about what happens if you have a sudden wealth experience. What is sudden wealth? That's, first of all, wealth is how you define it. It could be finding a $20 bill on the ground as you're walking around. That can feel like a big amount of money. Or it can be multi-millions of dollars that you are gifted, inherited, lottery, big bonus, a cash out from stocks that you've owned. Maybe your company went public. Lots and lots of reasons for people all of a sudden to have much more wealth than they have in the past. And that situation creates all sorts of questions that need to be answered. So without further ado, let's jump in. We're going to start talking about cash flow issues. And the first thing, and we'll probably hit on taxes more than once, but the first thing you need to do is get an understanding of how it's taxed and make sure that you have set aside enough money to pay the taxes. Worst thing you can do is get the money and spend more and then have the taxes come due later and you won't have enough to pay them. Another question is, do you think you're going to be making a large expenditure soon because of the money? You're going to go buy a new car, new boat, new house, etc. Make sure you've set that money aside so that you can make that purchase. And now the more mundane, having these new resources, is that going to change how you live your life? Do you need to revisit your routine spending habits? See how that's going to fit in. It could be that going forward, you can actually save more. We can talk about how to save that in a different video, but maybe you'll be that lucky person who can save more. And it could be that this new wealth might affect your regular expenses that are tied to your income. Think about financial aid, student loans, Medicare costs can have a big effect on those. Now, what you inherit or acquire can have very different effects on your world. So did you receive an illiquid asset, something that doesn't turn into cash quickly? Real estate, interest in a private company. It's going to be important for you to understand what the investment is, how it's performing, and what are your strategies to divest it if you need to, or diversify with that as part of your portfolio. So if you inherit a portion of a company and nothing else, and your other investments are fairly small, you won't be very well diversified. So it will be important to think about how to diversify your holdings to manage risk in your world. Alternatively, if you've inherited cash, you may want to sit down, make a plan about how much to invest for the future, not spend it all at once, and really create a sound investment strategy for yourself. Another thing to know is, are there conditions that must be met to keep the new finances that you have? You know, your imagination is as good as mine. You can think of all sorts of things. Owning a portion of a private company may require that you can't liquidate it for a period of time, or there's limitations on when you can liquidate it. Could be a family house, or maybe even a portion of a family house that you can't sell or do anything with until all the other owners agree to that. And there's all sorts of situations that can have limitations. Personal situation, maybe when you've acquired this newfound financial asset, you already had debt. It's important to look at those debts and decide whether or not you should be paying those off. If you've got credit card debt, absolutely look at paying those off. Prioritize those cards with high interest rates first. And if you've got student loans, having a little extra cash to pay those off can be great. But it's important to look at the repayment plan that you're on. Paying off early may or may not be in your best interest, especially if you're near to achieving the forgiveness on the loans and you can keep working, say, in a nonprofit and achieve that forgiveness sooner rather than later. It may be ideal not to pay that off. Go ahead and let the system do what it's supposed to do. So other related ideas are a mortgage. Is it the right answer to pay off a mortgage? The spreadsheet answer is no, don't pay it off. But emotionally, it might make a whole heck of a lot of sense to pay that off. So you can look at the numbers and see what's going to happen there. If you received an inheritance or a gift of non-cash assets, it's really critical to understand the rules around basis. In a very general sense, basis is whatever that investment was worth at the date of death in the case of an inheritance. If it's a gift, basis is whatever the gifter paid for that asset. Those are going to have a really huge implication someday when you sell that asset and how much is going to be taxable. So understanding basis when it comes to whatever it is that's come into your life is really, really important. Now, it could be that before you've inherited this money or made this big bonus or sold your company, you had made loans to family members, and now that you have more resources, you want to be generous with these folks and forgive the loans. If you choose to do that, be sure and check on the taxability of those loans and whether or not it's going to affect your gift tax obligation. If it's more than $15,000 in a year, it definitely will impact your gift tax obligations. New area is to think about your insurance needs. Now, your insurance needs can go any number of directions. It could be that you had insurance, but now that you've got this inheritance or new money, there's no longer a need for the insurance because your resources are greater. Now, if the new money that's come into your world is so great that it's pushing you into estate and inheritance tax territory, you may want to add more insurance to pay those taxes in the event of your death. So it can go either way. And related to that is, now that you have this newfound wealth, are you more at risk for lawsuits? If that's the case, then you may want to up your insurance umbrella policy coverage. So insurance can go all over the place. Now, taxes, taxes are going to come into this. Can you control the timing and the terms of your wealth event? Especially when you're selling a company, you may be able to do it over time to minimize taxes. Not everything can be managed time-wise, but if you have that ability, it's worth looking into for taxes. If anything that's coming into your world can be taxed as ordinary income, think like a bonus. An inherited IRA is going to have required minimum distributions that have ordinary income, severance pay, some kinds of legal settlements. All of those may be subject to ordinary income. And if tax isn't withheld, be sure you reserve enough cash to pay that income tax or even make estimated tax payments to avoid those penalties and avoid coming up short when the tax bills due. If you're over 65 on Medicare, the income may increase your adjusted gross income, and that might subject you to surcharges on Part B and D 2 years after the receipt. So you get it this year, that surcharge doesn't happen for a couple of years. Be prepared to plan for that. You can request an exception, but at best I see them coming through at maybe 50-50. Now, if you have net investment income and the new income increases your adjusted gross income above $200,000 or $250,000 if you're married, you may be subject to the net investment income tax. We call it the NIT. These are things to plan for. So it's an extra layer of tax on your income. What about longer term planning issues? So is this event significant enough to dramatically change your financial position? If so, really, we need to start looking at your overall plan in light of this new situation. Totally changes things. Make appropriate changes to your objectives, what you want to do. What's important to you probably doesn't change, but the scope of what you can do about those things that are important can change. Your time horizons can change. Maybe you can retire earlier. Risk tolerance may change. You may not need to take on as much risk to achieve your goals. You may want to look into other wealth preservation strategies that fit your new situation. Do you have kids or grandkids that are going to go to college and will need help with that financially? 529 plans are a great way to do that. And with a sudden lump of money, there's ways to put in more than the normal gift tax amount limits at a time. Look into that if you've got folks that you want to fund education for. And almost everybody in a situation like this needs to revisit their estate planning, what they have set up. And in most cases, it's probably time to update it. Most folks don't keep their estate plan updated. For those of you who do, I apologize, but most of you don't. So make sure that you've revisited that, make sure that your wishes are being acknowledged within there. And as always, when we do estate planning, make sure that everything that you've changed in your estate plan is reflected on all of your accounts elsewhere, your insurance policies, your IRAs, that kind of thing. Now that you have this largesse, do you want to make gifts to your families and friends? Maybe you do. Remember that you can gift to each person up to $15,000 without triggering a gift tax obligation. Gift taxes are the responsibility of the giver, not the receiver. So if you're the one giving out the money, you need to track this. Could be that you're charitably inclined. And if you have one of those sudden money events that has an ordinary income tax element, the year that those taxes are being assessed might be the year you want to consider making your charitable contributions. That can reduce your taxable income. And finally, there's some just general, not easily categorized things that I want to put into your brain to think about. Will your good fortune be publicized? So if your sudden money event is winning the lottery, you might be required by law to make it public. Not all states have those laws. Do check into it before you turn your ticket in. And whether it's widely publicized or not, just getting extra money exposes you to more fraudsters, if you will. More frauds and scams will come your way. And you may get requests from family, friends, long lost relatives for financial interest, for financial help. Be prepared. Know ahead of time what you are willing to do for folks. If it's an extreme event, you might want to consider more physical and or cybersecurity measures in place. You might need to move if it's that significant, just to protect you and your family. And finally, just sort of one little leftover item, there may be state issues involved. Different states have different rules about the money when you have significant wealth events, as well as different inheritance tax rules that are separate from the federal estate tax laws. So that's a lot of things to think about when you have a significant financial event in your world. Not every situation calls for an answer to all of these questions, but know that new money comes with new responsibilities. Yes, congratulations, you've got it, but be a good steward. Take good care of you and your family and the resources that you have available. As always, thank you for joining us. This is Dee Dee Jones with Innovative Financial. Be sure to like, follow, share, all those good buttons. We're here to help you. If you've got further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day.